Hi everyone, and welcome back to part 2 of my 20 pence meal experiment.
In this country, we've got generation after generation who cannot cook properly, they can't cook a meal from scratch, they cannot budget, the challenge is there.
Now, when I started this experiment, I really wanted to try and see if it was physically possible to prepare food for your family for just 20 pence a head per day. Now, my findings have really surprised me. I was really shocked about what I've seen. So here's a breakdown of my meals through the week, what they've cost, and what I made.
So here's the first meal. So this is that's the dog you can hear in the background. The first meal, we've got traditional Sunday roast. So this is obviously way over the budget, but it's still actually very reasonable with the fresh vegetables and the roast chicken. And what I'm hoping is this is actually going to provide food for several days.
Absolutely loads of food here. Gonna have plenty left over.
Right, so this is just a super simple dish, which is kind of like my version of something that a lot of the Filipinos that I used to work with taught me, which is basically you just do like you cook down the chicken and the vegetables that are left over with a lot of stock, a lot of water, make a lot of stock, and then you just put in some rice and you cook it down and the rice expands. It just makes this really tasty, very simple to make rice dish, and I seem to have an amazing quantity of it. So this was just the leftovers, and I seem to have way more than I need for 4 people. It's brilliant. So this is day 3, spaghetti and meatballs, tasty dish.
Potatoes, carrots, dumplings, tomato passata, and sausages. It did blow the budget because it's actually about 50 pence a portion, because I also put in a tin of beans, which really bulks it out. You wouldn't have to do that, but actually I think there's enough food for 2 meals there, so that might actually drop it down to 25 pence a portion, which is of course still over the 20p. So far the 20p price is eluding me. So what you're probably wondering is, did I actually succeed? Well, if we go from the 30 pence per meal that was arguably what was originally said, I just about did it. I didn't expect to be able to say that, but as you've just seen from the breakdown of the numbers, practically achieved it. But of course there's more to it than that. The amount of effort and work that was involved in creating these meals and planning the meals and making sure there was zero wastage, because it's the wastage that's really one of the most costly things. This all took up a huge amount of my time. Now, the problem with that is not everyone has that time. I mean, I actually took a sort of allotted a space of my time for a week to do this. Now, a lot of people, if you're a hardworking person, you may be a single parent, you're maybe working, 16, 18 hours a day, you're trying to also fit in childcare and things like that. You're not going to have time to make these kind of preparations. But if you do, then it's feasible. Now, for a second, I'm just going to address the elephant in the room. Now, fuel costs. The downside of a lot of the dishes that I've been cooking is they require fairly long cooking times. A roast chicken, your oven is on. So by the time it's preheated, it's on for the best part of 2 hours. The sort of stews and stuff that I did on the hob, they're actually quite good because they're just using one burner. I deliberately did it in like a Le Creuset style pot with the lid on, so it's actually, the burner's barely on to keep the thing at sort of around boiling point. So they're actually quite efficient. But you know, you do need to think about these things. I've been baking my own bread, which the immediate cost of baking the bread is tiny, because it's literally just the price of flour and a pinch of salt, because I use my own sourdough yeast. So, you know, you can buy a great big value 1.5 kilo thing of flour for about 50 pence, which is really cheap. It makes 3 or 4 loaves. But the downside of it is, of course, each loaf takes approximately an hour to bake on a high heat. So that is actually a fair bit of oven time. I do try and cook them at the same time as I've got the oven on cooking other things, to try and save on power, which is a good sort of money saving tip. So here it is. Here's the breakdown of the dishes I made.
So as you can see, I've experimented with a few different dishes, and I put down the sort of approximate costs on here for you. Some of them, as you can see, are way below the budget, and some of them are a bit above. None of them are particularly expensive, but it does kind of average out.
Something that really does come out of this is that when I looked, and I'm going to do a follow-up video about this, when I looked at the cost of pre-prepared food, even very cheap pre-prepared food, compared to fresh food nearly always comes out cheaper. Now, like I said, I will do some comparison videos to follow, but there's a huge advantage of using fresh ingredients. A lot of people also spoke to me about things like, you know, why aren't you using foraged ingredients? Why aren't you out in the hedgerows? Things like that. And make a great point. The reason I haven't is because that is arguably not accessible to everyone, although a lot of the comments are pointing out that, you know, there are still green areas within the city where one can collect things. And this is the middle of winter right now. There is not a lot. There's not a lot. But yeah, maybe a follow-up video about things that can be collected and eaten for free. All the herbs within my dishes, they grow in a container in my garden, which is, not everyone has a garden, but if you have a windowsill, or even you can grow them indoors, to be honest. 99% of these herbs grow very well indoors. So you can grow them from seed. The cost is negligible. I really hope you've enjoyed that, and I hope it has given you some ideas and insight. But for me, the big takeaway is the effort involved in this sort of menu planning. As a professional butler, as a reasonably accomplished cook, I did just about manage it with allotting a large proportion of my time to it. So is it easy? Is it accessible for everyone? Should everyone have no excuse for it costing them more than 30 pence to cook? No, 100% not. Cooking for anything under £1 a head is very, very difficult. Cooking for £1 a head is relatively easy, but cooking for less than that is very difficult, a real challenge. So I think maybe what we can say is, sustainably, if you can afford to spend £1 a head per person per meal, you can do that without too much difficulty. At the moment, 2022, just going into 2023 prices. But that will, of course, change. So thank you very much, and I look forward to speaking to you again soon. Bye-bye.